Hello, Jeffrey. How are you?
Hey, Dor. I am fresh off a Peloton, and my dopamine is up, and I'm ready to engage.
Of course, you have a Peloton. It's just like an LA lifestyle you lead. You work in media and you have a Peloton. I mean, can you be more generic?
You know what? I agree. I'm a basic bitch, but I've never felt a high as good as post Peloton, post shower, hydration.
Well, I think it's not just like I have a regular exercise bike. I have a Peloton, and that's when you know.
Well, no, I need a Peloton because I don't have any self-discipline. If I had an exercise bike without a teacher on the screen telling me what to do exactly when to do it, I would just sit on the bike and not
there
pedal.
You go. Fine. I take it back. You need a Peloton.
My name's Jeff. I'm calling in from California.
My name's Dora, and I'm joining you from London.
Out of 16 million, we are two.
Two freaked out Jews. You know, going back to last week, we spoke a little bit about how we were in the army in this program called Galin Sabar, how we were in our kibbutz Sasa, which is at the moment evacuated because of the threat from the north. And I had a general question for you, Jeff. Why, to take you back, why did you decide to join the army? And I've got a follow-up. Go for that one first.
And you'll also answer why you decided to do the army.
Sure,
right?
I'll do it as well.
So you're asking me, yeah, I mean, that's a fair enough question. So yes, there's a conscription, a draft in Israel for civilians to join the army.
Correct.
But I chose to fly from the United States to Israel to join the army. Mm-hmm. I think there's two reasons why I found it important to go and join the Israeli army and fight as a combat soldier. Mm-hmm. One of them is maybe superficial. It's not ideological. It is regarding me, my personality. I was a terrible student. I don't learn in a classroom atmosphere. Mm-hmm. So I tried to go to college and I lasted about half a semester and I never went to class. So I just say I have never been to college because I went to a college. I went there physically, but I didn't go to any classes. So
that wouldn't help.
So
that doesn't help if you're trying to.
Yeah, so I didn't go to college. Is pretty much the answer. It wasn't for me. And I wanted an adventure and I wanted to feel purpose, and something about the structure of the army called to me.
It's interesting because you say that you're very unstructured and yet you're going into a body, any military.
I crave structure.
You crave structure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I am unstructured, but I crave structure. And
that's why we're friends,
even as a
Jeff.
kid,
That's
something about... Yeah, maybe. So I think I was drawn to that. I am adventurous. I do like adventure, and I had, but the reason I didn't join the American military, which I do support, and I love America, but the reason I didn't is because I also have an ideological side of me that is believing in Zionism, which is I believe in Jewish self-determination in our ancestral homeland. It's not controversial to believe that Jews should be self-determining.
It's become a bit of a bad word, but we should claim it back. Yes.
What, Zionism?
Well, it's been used by every progressive as like a negative slur, but really, yes, it's a self-determinist movement.
Yeah, I know. It's of course. So I grew up believing in Jewish self-determination, the romanticism of Israel. I love Israeli culture. I love Israel. I mentioned last time I feel more of myself when I'm there. And then when it comes to Jewish safety, it's always for me been standing up and fighting rather than assimilating and blending in.
Although you do live in America, you're very American, so you could say that you maybe have both sides. Or
assimilated.
Are you saying, or I'm just pushing back on you, or are you saying when it comes to Jews being threatened, you're more on that side than the assimilation side, but in your day-to-day life, obviously you live in America, you speak, you can say there's a little bit of assimilation. Any Jews that live in the diaspora,
for sure,
there's
I'm assimilated.
Of being connected to the country that they're from. You say you're American. That's not a bad thing, by the way.
Yeah.
People say assimilation is like a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad word.
No, you're right. I am assimilated in a lot of ways. I ride my Peloton.
Exactly.
But I think when it comes to Jewish safety...
Right.
When it comes to Jewish safety, which is something that isn't given right now, my instinct is to fight, and my instinct is to believe in self-determination and not depend on the kindness of our neighbors and not depend on the kindness of host countries to the Jewish people.
That's fair. When you decided to go to Israel and obviously join the army, from that perspective, did you feel like Israel was in danger? Did you feel did you feel like you wanted to be part of that ability to defend if needed be? What was the reason for it?
I don't think there's ever been a time in my life where I didn't feel somewhere deep in me that Israel isn't in danger.
Gotcha.
I mean, when I joined the army, it was the height of the Lebanon war, so I definitely felt like I was in danger. Mm-hmm. But on another sense, it was a large portion of what drove me was the adventure and being 18 years old and feeling invincible. Like if I was to join the army, I mean, I'm not. You can see I'm not there fighting right now, and I do have a lot to say about that if that's something you're wondering about. But also, I want to hear about what drove you to go do the army.
Yeah, so I mean, I flipped a coin. I joke. I laugh. I actually did flip a coin. It's like a mechanism that my friend taught me to reveal your true feelings. But no, for
Wait,
me,
how do you mean? Your friend? So you were on the fence about joining the army, so you flipped a coin trying to figure out like what you hoped it would be. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, I flipped a coin, and I think it showed the don't join the army. And then my friend said to me, "How do you feel about that?" And I said, I'm not too happy. She's like, well, you know what you want then. So it's like a mechanism to reveal your inner feelings.
Yeah.
But so I technically, yes, I flipped the coin, but that wasn't the reason I joined. For me, I was born in Israel. I left when I was 6.5. I still remember. All my family lives there. You know, growing up, I speak Hebrew. A lot of TV shows, they all have the army blended in because everyone in Israel goes to the army. There's conscription. And for me, again, I don't impose this opinion on anyone, but for me, part of my Israeli identity meant going to the army. I had no desire to go shoot a gun or to do anything like that or run around. I hate doing hikes. But people come to me a lot and say, oh, you went to the army. Should I go to the army? And I always go to them and say, I'm going to tell you what the army is and you make that choice. I'm not making that decision for you. One, because it's dangerous. And two, they made me walk a lot up hills and you're going to curse me when you're like not sleeping and not eating at night. And I don't want that on my conscience. So I think everyone defines their own identity in that sense. For me, the army was part of it. So that's what I joined. But everyone else can make their own choices. And I'm very happy to tell anyone the good and the bad about the army before they go.
I'm really glad that I was in the army, so I will say that.
Oh yeah, look, they made me walk a lot, and I don't like it. But I'm overall glad of the people I met. You know, I reminisce quite fondly because I don't remember the blisters anymore. So yeah, I'm happy I did it, but it was tough.
And what's your follow-up question you had?
Well, the follow-up question, which you kind of hinted, I think you guessed my follow-up question, was we're both in the reserves. Of course, now reserves are being called up to fight in Gaza and the West Bank, sitting on the northern border. We know people who are in the reserves that are there, our friends. My question is, why didn't you decide to go back as a reserve to help Israel now under the war with Hamas?
Well, I'm not proud of my answer. In fact, it's like I have a lot of guilt about it. It's a complicated feeling that I've had.
I know it was going to be a tough question.
Yeah, I mean, I have 2 children, and I'm very involved in their life. They're very involved. I work remote. I pick them up from school at 4:00. Like I have 2 children that I'm very, very close with, and I just don't think I have the strength to leave them in a life-threatening situation. And it's something that I'm not proud to say that at all, because I know there's Israeli fathers and mothers who have to make that decision in Israel. And it's just like not a good feeling. I don't like talking about it. It just sucks. I've been having dreams. I've had a couple dreams since October 7th about feeling this kind of impotence. For instance, I have a dream that I am a soldier and I can't find my gun, that I lost my gun.
Well, that happened to you as well.
No, it didn't. No, Moti hid it from me. Should we tell that story?
We can tell it, yeah.
We'll get back to that. Let me just finish this thought. My other dream was that I was on a flight full of young Israelis going back to the army, and they were like, "How old are you?" And I was like, "I'm 27," which I knew was a lie in the dream, because I'm actually 37. And all the Israelis were like, 27, you're so old. It's another dream I had about feeling old and unuseful and cowardly, and I just don't have the strength and the that I had when I was younger. That's
It's an
my answer.
interesting, it's an interesting answer because I mean, one of what you're saying is I've got a life, I've got to look after my kids, I'm very attached while still realizing that some people have no choice. I think it's very interesting. We can maybe come back to it in another conversation, but it's an interesting thing that there is. I think we need to acknowledge that we have a different role as diaspora
What's
Jews
your
as opposed
what's
to
your
Israeli
answer?
Jews.
What's your answer to your own question?
My answer is probably more weaselly than yours because I don't have kids. So at least you can fold on the kids angle. Right?
Weaselly? Yeah.
I mean, that's like a judgment on you. No, I'm just taking that from you.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm reflecting on myself. No, I think for me, well, first of all, again, I'm going to be, again, this is a very hard question. I knew I asked a hard question. So I'll be quite selfish. I think the war started, I had my own personal war, in quotations, to try to get this wedding going. And I was consumed with that. And it's very difficult to do that. But that was my mini war room. I think that post that, I think in general, physically I'm not the same. I can't, I haven't been training for so long.
You should get a Peloton.
Yeah, well, no, I'm saying I haven't trained in army sense. I haven't, I don't know. If
Oh yeah, you haven't done
unit is.
Miluim. You haven't done reserve.
Yeah,
Neither
I haven't
have
done reserve
Yeah.
duty. I mean, the
Neither
last time I was in like army stuff was when I was, 22, 21?
Also, Dor, let's face it, like, if our commanding officers from the army were gonna pick 2 soldiers to come back right away, we're not on the top of that list. Neither of us.
No. What do you mean? I was, Jeff, I was like the lead sharpshooter. I actually surprisingly, and even...
Even so, I was kidding. I mean, I had my moments, but I'm just saying that, like...
there's better people than us. I mean, let's be honest. We are not going... It's not like you and me are going to come and that's it, Hamas is screwed. No. Definitely not. But I think generally, like, even physically, like, in terms of carrying stuff, it's like, unfortunately, this makes it sound like such old guys, but we haven't trained for ages. I probably arrive in Israel, my profile, which determines...
We'd be very old out there, right? I know there are people who are older than us, and there are...
Of course. And I look, and I said...
We're so weaselly, Dor. We are so weaselly. Oh my
This is such a weaselly way out, but this is
I want to change the topic. This is tough.
No, but I think it's important because like a lot of people feel that way, and I think that bit that look, at the end of the day, we came to Israel out of choice. We didn't have to. You and me didn't have to join the army, and a lot of people don't join the army.
And we got
Even
the choice again, and we didn't.
Yeah, and we had the choice again, and we do have.
But but we're so different now. We have a sense of mortality. We have new wives. We have children. I'm being weaselly. And I don't know who I'm like trying to. I'm seeing the faces of our friends that are in Miluim right now, in Gaza right now, and I'm like, I know they're shaking their heads.
And I think there's no excuse. But on the other hand, Jeff, like, we're saying the reality. I mean, I'm just speaking what people are doing, and I know a lot of people are feeling the same way. I remember in the army they always said the human brain cannot think of saving Israel, saving a country, saving a city. It's too much. What you do when you're in the army, you think about your family, you're protecting them, and you're protecting the soldier next to you. The brain can understand that. Mm-hmm. And at the moment, personally, the country is not going to benefit necessarily from me. Even when I joined the army initially, I didn't think I was going to save the country when I joined. Let's be honest.
I did. I was I am saving this place. I was such a romantic, and I still kind of am.
No, I think, and I'll say this, I'll add to my previous answer. Like, I did it for me. I said it was part of my identity. I didn't do it as I thought I was the savior of the country. Like, without me, they won't be able to protect the borders. Let's be honest. And I don't think they need me now to protect the borders. They need me to share the burden, that's for sure, but not to protect the borders. And look, I knew I was asking a tough question. It's a tough question of myself and a tough question for you. And yeah, people can judge, but I think everyone has to be honest with themselves where they stand. And that's the most honest answer I can give. All
right. That was a tough one, Dor. We're such weasels. Anyway, yeah. So that was a great question. So it's now my turn to ask a question.
Go for it.
So, Dor, I think that you are a little more in tune with the nuts and bolts of the Knesset and Israeli politics. I have a specific person in Israeli politics I want to talk about because he's spoken of. He's important. It's Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi.
I know him.
Yeah, you know that guy. Right now, I know he's disliked by a majority of the Israeli public, and he's blamed for what happened on October 7th.
Allegedly, his popularity is
Okay.
down.
I know that there was like 12 elections in the span of 3 weeks last year. I want to know why there can't be an election. Why can't that change? And also, do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is to blame for October 7th?
Wow, that's an interesting question. So, let me be honest. I don't vote for Bibi. I don't think that a person should be in power that long in a democracy, and I don't think it's healthy. I think that he's done a lot of good things, previously economic, Abraham Accords. He's done a bunch of good things. He's done a lot of bad things. The judicial reform ripped the country to shreds. People can argue on both sides, but the reality is it was huge two sides and it ripped the country, and a leader should have stepped up and stopped that. However, you didn't ask about all that. You asked about, is he to blame for the 7th of October? I think that's an interesting question. So, number one, it happened under his watch. So by default, yes, he should definitely stand up. Like, you're the prime minister, you're a leader, something happens. In England, we say the buck stops at the top. So he has to take responsibility for that. He was also prime minister for the last 15 years. Let's be honest. I mean, I know there was a gap of a year and a half where he wasn't prime minister, but he was prime minister. So is he to blame? I think the strategy Israel had is appeasement and economic prosperity, and hopefully Hamas will change their tune. On the 7th of October, we all realized that was a mistake. But I think we all have to admit that wasn't a Bibi decision. That is the entire country. Okay, as I said, there's 5% of people said we should destroy Hamas and destroy Gaza from the beginning. Those are the people that believe in a one-state solution. It should all be Greater Israel. And, screw the Palestinians. I think they're deranged. That's never going to be a solution. So I'm talking about the sane 95% of the country. 95% of the country thought appeasement was the correct solution. We were all wrong. So I don't blame Bibi on that, because we all thought the same. Every politician, everyone.
Can you explain what you mean by appeasement? Just define that.
Appeasement is basically let them... You tolerate little things. You tolerate a rocket here, you tolerate there. Every once in a while there'll be an incident. But overall, you think over time, they will slowly change and economic prosperity will rule, and they'll learn to live together. We don't have to go for the military route. We don't have to create a conflict. Slowly over time, we'll learn to live with each other and everyone will be happy. England, the UK tried it with Hitler. They sort of, okay, let him have Czechoslovakia. It's fine. He'll be fine.
This is like under Chamberlain. Before.
Under Chamberlain. And then he won't want to do anything else. So we'll give him that little bit and then nothing else. Obviously that failed. But in the meantime, the UK started rearming. The tactic was like, okay, we're going to go for appeasement. That's our strategy. Tactically, we're gonna rearm. We need to build up our military. So I think the strategy was not wrong. It was wrong, but we all believed in it. So I'm not going to blame anyone for that.
What about Dor? Can I ask you this? What about the claim that Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinets were appeasing Hamas in order to keep an entity in power that didn't believe in a two-state solution, or in order for the fan base of the right in Israel to be appeased by not having a two-state solution? Is that a fair argument?
I think, yeah, that's a classic divide and conquer, right? So it strengthens Hamas, so they keep fighting Fatah in the West Bank, and they keep hating each other, and there's no Palestinian state. I think some people had that tactic.
I think Bibi had that tactic, don't you think?
I don't know how calculated that is. It could have been one of his goals, but it's a secondary strategy. The core belief was, I'm not going to go to have a massive war with them. I'm not prepared for it. And that's across society. So that's the core. thing. You might be right on whatever.
Yeah.
It also helps him with divide and conquer, but the core is shared by everyone in society. We are not ready mentally for a war to lose that many lives on both sides. So therefore, if you're going to go for a strategy of appeasement, which is fine, this is where I do blame him. The tactics were wrong. If that's what you're going, you know that they might attack, and clearly they attacked every couple of years. We had a conflict. You increase your defense insanely, and the defense in the southern border was never adequate. Those people have been crying out for better protection, not only from the border but also on their houses. It took them ages until they got proper safe rooms from rockets.
Where was all the military might?
Well, the military might was Israel was it thought that we can win by technology. So Iron Dome clearly gave us a lot of respite. We can rely on our intelligence. We don't need to fortify the border. We have like a nice fancy fence. Again, technology. We don't need to fortify.
So where were all the soldiers? They were in the West Bank, right?
And on top of that, a lot of the soldiers were moved to the West Bank because it was religious holidays. And let's be honest, the current government has more people voting for it in the West Bank, in settlers. So they moved a lot of the soldiers there. But regardless, even if they didn't move those units, Bibi's been in power for like nearly 15 years. The overall lack of investment in a proper defense in the scenario that Hamas would attack is a failure of the defense establishment and Bibi himself. Because he claims that he's Mr. Security. This is a massive security failure. So as I said again...
biggest in Israeli history.
It is the biggest in Israeli history. It's worse than the Yom Kippur War. I don't blame him for the strategy because none of us were ready for a war against Hamas. I don't blame him for that. I blame him for the tactic of basically leaving those people undefended. That's I'll say it, that's a fuck up on the tactics, that if you're going to appease a terrorist organization, your defense must be strong, and that's a failure. So I do blame him for that, and I think at the end of the day, he will stand up and say, it's my fault, because, he's a great politician. I don't think he's a great leader, because a great leader takes responsibility. He's a great politician.
He's not. He's yet to take responsibility. He's kind of been...
I know, that's what I said. A leader takes responsibility. A politician spins stuff.
I'm holding him more responsible than you are, it sounds like. My reasoning is this.
Okay.
I think it was the Trump era that woke me up to understanding Bibi, because I really don't like Donald Trump. I don't like the way that Donald Trump divided Americans against each other.
Yeah.
I think that weakened America. I don't think that Trump is to blame for America being weaker than the past, but I think he's a symptom of it. But I saw what Trump was doing of pitting Americans against each other. So I went to Israel during the Trump era, and I saw a huge sign of Bibi with Trump kissing his ring, and I was kind of waking up to the fact that I thought that was gross. And I didn't think at the time that Trump was good for Israel. I still don't think he is.
He would argue that they managed to do the Abraham Accords, right?
Okay, I can circle back to Abraham Accords.
Go on.
But what's the point of the Abraham Accords if Israel is destroyed? Okay, so what I'm saying is that Trump, like Bibi, are populist leaders who try to pit two sides against each other in order for them to stay in power. I think that Bibi... Would you say that Bibi has made the divide of the Israelis wider?
Yeah, first of all, I think you're 100% right about the populist movement. I think this is something we see across the world. It's probably because of the rise of social media and the fact that and Trump, I think, probably created it. He created the whole concept of fake news. Believe what you want.
Right.
There is no more...
Which weakened America, facts, which weakened the West, which weakened Israel.
You can believe whatever you want. The sky's purple. The sky is bright orange. Believe what you want. I think that's hurt society in general, democratic society.
And Israel is a small country, whereas America is a huge country that has a cushion for mistakes and a cushion to change course. Whereas Israel is a small country surrounded by hostile enemies, where 15 years of a populist leader who's pitting Israelis against each other for their own political means has resulted in October 7th, has resulted in a disaster.
I don't know if it again, definitely especially the judicial reform, agree with it or not. Obviously, I disagree with it, and I can go into lots of reasons why, but that's not what we talk about. But regardless of what it is, it divided the country. And I can say this from a UK perspective. We had Brexit. Again, you can agree with Brexit or you don't disagree with Brexit. It divided the country. And you're right, in Israel, we can't take for granted, when we are divided by definition, you're weaker. And we have enough enemies around us that weakness can have cataclysmic consequences.
And it did.
And I'll touch on it actually from a religious point of view. I'll be honest, I'm not religious, but I used to go into Jewish school, and we studied the previous Israel.
And you're saying the first Israel was the Israel of King David 2,000 years ago?
Yeah, it's biblical stories,
right.
But there's elements of truth in it. But from a religious perspective, the reason that both those Israels were destroyed, and those kingdoms lasted about 70 years as well, 70 to 80 years. So we're roughly in the same ballpark. They were destroyed because they had enemies from outside. But religiously, the reason they were destroyed by division within. Judah didn't want to deal well with Israel. There were 12 tribes, they didn't get along. And basically, God said, we're going to take you out of the land of Israel because you can't get along. And so if you look at it from a religious perspective, division has always been our Achilles heel.
I think October 7th should be a wake-up call to all Western democracies.
Oh, yes.
Because we are in the midst of a divide, a global divide, and it's not getting any better. So I hope that everyone is paying attention to this as a cautionary tale.
100%. I think you're really right. And we see this in all democracies and across the Western world that is so divided.
So how do we get past this Bibi era?
Yes, strategically, Bibi should go for the good of the country, for the good of democracy, from that perspective. But I think that my honest opinion, and we can talk about what happens on the day after. I think that the concept of normalization that Abraham Accord started with the Arab world is a major breakthrough in Arab mentality, and it facilitates Saudi Arabia normalizing with Israel. I think part of the reason the 7th of October happened is to stop that normalization, because Iran is very afraid of that. I think it will happen, and I think it's going to contribute to the Palestinians getting a state and being in a better position. So I think overall it's important. And you know what? I'm very much in a belief that even if I don't like a politician, I don't like someone, I can say I give you credit when credit's due, right? That was a good policy. I don't like Bibi. I think he's a very bad leader. On the other hand, I think he's an excellent politician.
Listen, Dor, I think you don't like Benjamin Netanyahu. You don't like Bibi, but for the right reasons. There's so many people out there that don't like him for the wrong reasons. And people in the West don't like him because he's the head of Israel. He's the demon. He's the apartheid. He's the colonizer. He's all the bad things you could ever think of because he's, so.
And I think life is like it is. Life is gray. It's not black and white. And it's the same thing with Israel and Palestinians. If you keep staying in your camp, you're never going to be able to bridge that. And you need to acknowledge when you do something wrong and when they do something right, and then you'll be able to eventually shake hands.
All right, Dort, let's use that point to get us to our final beat, which is reading a letter from a fan. We got an email from a listener to our email address, twofreakedoutjews@gmail.com.
Yeah.
But this one's poignant because we are approaching Hanukkah.
It's my favorite festival, actually.
I love the cozy winter feeling of it. We actually have an amazing army Hanukkah. Do you remember that?
No, I don't actually. You remind me.
We were in the field for something. We were out in the desert. It was freezing cold, and we lit a menorah. It was out of ammunition boxes filled with oil.
Yes.
And we all stood around this makeshift menorah and kept warm from the freezing desert air. If it was the most biblical I've ever felt.
I do love candles as well. It's a great festival. Anyway.
Yes. Anyways, here's the question.
Festival of Hope.
Okay, well, here's the question from Anonymous. There have recently been some disturbing anti-Semitic incidences where I live, and I'm worried about putting my Hanukkah menorah in the window because I don't want my home to be targeted. What should I do?
Wow, that's an interesting question. So first of all, I'm really nervous about giving like safety advice in case something happens. I think it's a wider question on how we feel in the diaspora as Jews. Look, I'll be honest with you. I think Jews in the diaspora, probably more in England than America. You guys are more loud and proud. That's just Americans, not generally Jews. I think that we are always a bit cautious. Our schools are more protected than other schools. I don't use my real name on Uber, for example. So on one hand, part of me says, light a menorah, put it on your windowsill. But I think it's a very personal decision to do it. I think number one thing, stay safe, because there's crazy people out there. But maybe if you're not comfortable doing it on your own, in your own house, go to a menorah lighting ceremony. Go be in the community. Be surrounded, because we get our strength from each other.
You know what? I think that's beautiful, and I think that's right, Dor. I agree with you about that community one. I hope we have something like that here. And I want to sign off with a happy thought of I want to think about anti-Israel Jewish people like JVP, the types, if not now, grappling with the story of Hanukkah, this festival, about the Jewish fighting the resistance, the Maccabees fighting the Greeks in the land of Israel. It's fun for me to think of them grappling and struggling with that while it collides with their own idiotic ideologies.
Jeff, why don't you say, I liked your bit about the Maccabees and Hanukkah and linking it in a hopeful way. Don't mention...
Oh, shoot, we're divided. I just divided us further. I divided the Jewish people there.
Not now. Not at the end of the episode.
A little smear of the JVP.
No, don't leave us with a negative. What you said was really nice, and then it's sort of like, well, I hope they suffer thinking about this, instead of like, I want us to think, instead of you, like, what you said was really nice, but you kind of ruined it by saying someone else should suffer instead of we should be empowered.
Damn you, Dor. Fine, here I go.
It was a good point. I think you should end with it.
All right. I can't wait to light my menorah and teach my kids about the Jewish warriors, the Maccabees uprising and fighting for Jewish identity against the Greeks. We're going to be lighting our candles, I'm going to be thinking about the time we were warriors, lighting those ammunition boxes. I'm going to tell my son and daughter about that. This is a cozy holiday, and Jewish people out there, we're here with you, and we're all freaking out together, okay? Is that a good ending, Dor?
It sounds perfect to me, Jeff. Let's light the menorah.
I miss you, Dor. Happy Hanukkah.
You too. Bye, Jeff.
Bye, Dor. My name's Jeff. I'm calling in from California.
My name's Dor, and I'm joining you from London.
Out of 16 million, we are 2.
2 freaked out Jews.